Hi there, welcome to the Sacred Journey. The Sacred Journey is the program that reminds you that life is a wonderful adventure and each and every experience we have is a unique and perfect opportunity for learning. I'm Joyce St. Germain, and I am so pleased to have my dear friend and fellow practitioner, Ed Cleveland, presenting the space between the sound. Now, Ed is a neuroacoustic sound therapist and teacher, and I've invited him to share some of his wisdom, knowledge, and experience because there are lots of sound healers out there. I think, Ed, you were one of the originals and you continue to grow and learn, and I had to have you here. And we're going to first, a little disclaimer, we're going to tell our viewers that the sound quality may not translate well because of how powerful some of these sounds are and how unique they are. Sometimes the platform we're on misreads them as background noise and not intentional sound, and it might cut them off. So we're going to do our best, and I know you'll do a great job educating people, and we'll hope that the gods and goddesses of sound will come forward and help us with getting the show we want. So thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. I was processing and it came to me that I ended up meeting you by accident. I showed up at your house with a friend who was doing some construction on your house. That was way back in like 2009. So it's very interesting how we kept having this connection. Yes, so a neuroacoustic sound therapist is the title that's given through working with understanding more of the brain, because obviously we have thoughts that come in, they stay in our brain for a certain amount of time, and then they end up leaving or they end up coming back. But the whole process in listening and learning about a bowl is that sound, like a thought, will come in out of nowhere. It will sustain for a certain amount of time. And then where does the sound really go when it ends? Technically, everything is vibrating through quantum physics, so it actually has a way of continuing the process of always moving and working. So, yeah, I'd like to start with, these were some of the earlier bronze singing bowls. They're called a Manipuri singing bowl from the Manipuri kingdom. And these is you used to put medicines in and have the medicines mixed with whatever, with the herbs, with the liquids, and then you would either eat or drink or actually rub the medicine and put the bowl into the fascia layer of the skin. So there was so many different ways to use a bowl without even working with the sound. It was the alloy that was doing the work in alchemizing what you put into the bowl.
Right.
So the sound part is like an extra little ingredient to bring in that sound. So in choosing a bowl and making a wise investment, you want to know if you like a bowl that sounds more like a gong or more like a bell. And a bronze bowl is actually a standing gong. If you flatten it out, it's a gong. So this particular bowl sounds more like a bell in comparison for what I'm going to do next. Changing a mallet can make a different sound. Softer.
It's a little harder for us to hear, Ed.
So it has a softer texture. So in comparison, the mallets, one was brighter and one was a little bit more. So you're changing the treble and the bass, which also is like masculine and feminine, because in a neuroacoustic situation, we're working with the left-right hemisphere of the brain. This is the same type of bowl, a little bit different, and it sounds more like a gong. It has a whole deeper sound.
Now, I know ordinarily, I'm sorry, Ed, I don't mean to interrupt, but I know ordinarily you wouldn't need to strike it 3 times, one strike, and we would hear that for quite a while. But because of that little quirky thing we talked about, I know you have to strike it a few times for us to continue to hear it.
Yeah. And that is actually what we're going to be talking about that too, with working with alternating time and space. So this particular bowl was a D in the 5th octave, and this was an F in the 3rd octave, which is a higher note, but because of the octave, it was lower. Hence, the more of the treble and more of the bass, or feminine and masculine, or the bell and more of the gong sounding bowls. So in working and understanding how the sound works through going into different areas of ascending or descending sounds, these 2 bowls are called alta bodies. They have a different shape. They're also much lighter because they're antique alloy, softer copper, which was important. And now, because of plumbing pipes, we have industrial copper, which is why copper needs to be stronger. But in the older antique bowls, it was a softer alloy, softer copper. So therefore, it had more of a unique sound to it. Harder mallet, brighter sound. What's important about that? Mallets are more affordable than bowls. So if you can get different sounds from your investment by getting different mallets, you're creating different sounds.
Yeah, I took your advice on that, and I got a couple different pairs of mallets in the same instrument that I played with 3 different kinds of mallets is amazingly different. So thank you for that. So just
Look it
because
up.
a mallet came with an instrument does not mean it's the best, your preferred one, or the only one.
Exactly. And in having a lot of different ones, you want to play around with, this was a lot larger and it's much softer, but you're not going to get that sound, but it'll sound good on a gong or on another different instrument, or even on a drum. So having a variety of mallets is always the best thing. And so again, you have a comparison when you're using the 2, which one's more masculine, which one's more feminine, or bass and treble, which again, left, right hemisphere, masculine and feminine. So harmony, bringing in harmony also has to do with the sounds that you're making while you're playing for a person to help harmonize their thoughts. And again, hence the neuroacoustic part. So this other bowl, same style, playing in one direction will have one type of effect. So it would either be considered going up the scale or down the scale. If you think about a doorbell, ding dong, that's going down the scale. So going down the scale is really nice to work with unless a person is dealing with depression.
Right.
We don't really want to continue that area. We actually want to go up the scale to help uplift them and their thoughts and what they're going through. So this is where it becomes really important in doing this on a different level. And the opposite, if you're going up the scale, going higher, and a person has a lot of anxiety, too many thoughts, they can't sleep, that could possibly induce more of that. Right. So you want to kind of work with, if you're working one-on-one, what is the person going through and bringing harmony? So we want to look for, we're working with certain subjects and objects, which causes certain causes and conditions that we need to know about before we choose the area of sound that we want to use, or at least in my line, of how we're going to help that person, again, dealing with the causes and conditions that came from certain subjects and objects. If we don't touch base on those other areas, technically everything is going to go right back to where it was, because it's almost like a Band-Aid. You finish and the person feels good, but they get that phone call that's troublesome, and they're right back to where they are.
Yeah. And
So
I like sound healing so much because it isn't not, I don't think it's a self-contained modality. I use it in conjunction with my work as a hypnotherapist and also as a shamanic practitioner. It's a beautiful tool that I think just brings so much into healing modalities. It can be a standalone modality, but I like how it can be utilized and modified for whatever modalities you practice or however you approach healing.
yeah, yeah. And with that subject, um, choosing something like this, which is a Shinto Buddhist 5-element tea garden rattle, that if I continued making this sound for 5 minutes, it would entrain your brain to listening to that sound, which then allows you to then go from the left side, the left hemisphere where your thoughts are, which is the important part, to entrain that. It's like getting a person on the fishing line. And once you have them, when you start to slowly, subtly change those sounds, it brings them into the right brain of the feelings and emotions where now your shamanic journeys can happen and they can go to places. So they're basically, and it's usually best with your eyes closed. It opens up something which is technically called acoustomagnetic theory, where it can only happen because we're so eye oriented. We see an instrument, we hear a sound, and we say, okay, that's, and then, I like it, or so on and so forth. But when your eyes are closed, your brain will now search the database history of your life. What can I give that sound a name? And that's how sound can almost instantaneously take a person out of their problems. Switch from that left brain where all the problems are into what was that sound? And that's the gift.
And the right brain, unlimited potential and possibility.
Yes, into that space.
And I had never seen that instrument before. It's lovely. I love the way it sounds and the way it looks. It's beautiful.
Yes, it's actually a museum quality. I had a person share that had many years of experience, and they've only saw a couple of these in their whole lifetime. So I was grateful to become the caretaker.
Beautiful. And that's a great way to put it, caretaker, not owner. That's how I call my tools, my sound healing areas, and those two sections. And my, well, they're all sound instruments, but you know what I mean. My bowls and my gongs and chimes are, so caretaker. I love it.
It's special, and also because of that, we tend to grow to love our instruments. So when we go to play, it's like, I love this bowl, and I'm going to share a sound that I work with that I love with this bowl, and this is the offering that you're handing through the space of the air element to reach the other person. And in 5 elements, the instrument is made of 4 out of the 5 elements. It takes raw earth materials. It takes fire to melt it. It takes air to make the bellows hot enough, water to cold tune it, to clean it. The space element is inside the bowl. It's outside the bowl. It's a space of consciousness you're going into while you're playing, and the space of consciousness that you're offering another person to meet you at. Like, come into the gong space, the bowl space, where possibilities can happen.
Now, speaking of space, your space is in Hartford. Is it the Colt building or the Gold building? I'm not sure how it's called. It's Colt building, I believe.
It's art space.
Oh, art space. That's right. Okay.
Art.
Because I'll be sure to share your contact info at the end, but once in a while you might hear some traffic going by, viewers, just so you know, this is real life. We're not in a padded studio, a soundproof studio, and that's why I love kind of working like this, real life. So
sometimes you trains because the Union Station is right there. So when people are listening, I could have sworn I heard it was a train. So that's a unique thing, because we're altering and changing different sounds because there's always distractions, and we can't control certain distractions. So that outside sound is a white noise, But when playing, we're alchemizing now, just like in the bowl, we're alchemizing that white noise into pink noise. And pink noise is what helps to balance the body's pranamaya kosha.
Got it.
So, yeah, this particular bowl is called a moon bowl. It looks a little different, has different coloring because they actually bake this in an oil and they put a finish on. And then the company that gets them then puts their logo, their brand, sometimes a mantra will be on it. So when you're getting these, you realize that the company actually hand selects the bowls that they choose before going through this process. So some of the bowls could be shiny like that.
Are they more modern versus antiques?
This one is antique. So it's dull, it's very light because it's got that antique, the copper alloy. And bronze is technically supposed to be 80% copper, 20% tin in making the original formula. But when they go to reprocess and make newer bowls or different style bowls, like a pedestal bowl that has a stand, which is nice because you can hold and move it, that they're actually melting down other alloy or different bowls that maybe were broken or statues or things to get the actual alloy of bronze itself and then make the bowls. So sometimes you can have different properties in because of all the different molds of they're doing when they go to reprocess and recycle that, basically. It's recycled alloy. So this bowl is very unique.
Wow.
It's titanium.
I recognize it. I have a titanium sword.
Yeah, so this is titanium. This is another handheld titanium silver. So again, working with some moon energy.
Now, wait a minute, Ed, excuse me for a minute. The titanium one, like my titanium sword or dagger is quartz infused with titanium. Is that a quartz base with titanium? Oh, it is. Okay,
Yes.
so same thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you scratch it, you can see through it. So that, yes, is basically plating of it on. Makes it stronger too, and it gives it a different type of sound versus a crystal bowl because of the titanium itself. And then the handheld is basically that sound that you can make on a regular bowl. The handheld helps you to move, possibly change. I don't know if
it's coming through beautifully.
You could do like
yeah. Now, sound. I always think fragile when I see those. Any of the crystal bowls, I always think fragile compared to the metals.
And with a handheld, you got to be careful if you speak with your hands because of things around you.
Yeah.
So yeah. I usually pay attention to that a little bit more. The really beautiful story about this is I was using it in a group where a woman that had a titanium hip replacement, she was in constant pain. Nothing would work. The doctors kept saying, painkillers. Well, I came around with these bowls and she said her hip got really hot, like almost like she was going to raise her hand. And then when I finished playing, the temperature went down and she realized she was no longer in pain. So originally, I thought maybe because of the titanium that it kind of helped entrain, and maybe the natural vibration, quantum physics, was altered when it was implanted. And then I took some more classes and understood that the alloy helped get the implantment to vibrate more, so the nerve that was up against it, causing the pain, was now able to create space between, which then took away the pain.
Yeah, so they were literally speaking to each other, that part of the implant in the hip or joint, and that beautiful, as it should be.
Which is entrainment. It's that whole, that's talking to that, and I'm talking to you, and we're talking to the listeners. So
and then the space between the bowl and her hip is where healing can happen and intentions are set in travel. So that space, as you said, is so, so very important.
Yeah, yeah.
Healing
And the
happens.
word in our brain of, what Lyme disease? I don't even understand what that word means. If you keep saying to yourself, maybe your body will no longer recognize the certain disease or ailment, where now it can actually flush out, which again is a beautiful thing. But going back to the neuroacoustic part is, again, it's that left brain where all of our problems. So when we were kids, we were in the right brain. Want to have fun, I want to have fun. When are we going to have fun? Then we start going to school. How do I strategize and get through my day without getting picked on? Now it's how do I strategize for all these other reasons? So all of our stress is built up, which actually slows down our body's innate ability to want to heal itself. So when they call it sound healing, sound therapy, I chose that different word of the neuroacoustic part because it's really helping with the brain to help you with your thoughts to get out of that problem. So then you're basically surrendering and allowing your body that wants to heal time or space to actually go through, open up that relaxation response system, the vagus nerve, parasympathetic nervous system, because para is your friend.
Sounds perfect. Yep.
So in the taking instruments like a bell, I chose to take the clapper out of it, so then I can rim it like a singing bowl. And then you can work on doing different things to, again, to relax a person. So it's kind of using something like this would go more into the history. So in the history wise, and I chose this mallet because it's actually a softer wood. If I use a regular singing bowl mallet, the wood's a little bit too hard, so the sound's a little bit abrasive. And when you are working with sound, you find those mallets that, ooh, this is a nicer step, a different quality of sound. So these are called a Aganti and a Vajra, or a Drilbu and Dorje, if you're talking about coming from Tibet or India. There's bells and bell metals have been used to either call in or cast out. A church bell rings because there's a service. Church bells ringing because there's a fire, like a warning sign. So it helps to work with that. Some people call it a feng shui bell. But if it's working on calling in or casting out, this piece, which a lot of people aren't familiar with, it does come with it. As long as the tops are the same, then they're supposed to be used together. This is actually your protection piece. It falls in the wheel of sharp wheeled weapons. There's different history lessons of deities tossing something small like this at something. But these are peaceful, they're coming together. So this is the protection piece, helping you have diamond-plated protection, impenetrable, capable of shooting thunderbolt energy, like Thor, like Zeus, which is why you can actually use this to help to clear a space before you bring in the sound.
Yep, mine
So
came as a pair, like 25, 30 years ago. Yep, so glad to see that is still the practice.
And you can roll prayers into these.
And sideways, they
So
look a lot like the infinity symbol, which is, when you find that anywhere in life, I'm delighted.
Yeah.
About balance and movement.
Left, right hemisphere, how they're connected in the center, that chakra, the thoughts. So there's so many beautiful things that you can learn. If you go straight down, if I took the top off, it's actually a mandala. So now again, you can work with the space of the mandala, which is like the space of your auric field, or the space of the container of the room. And like quantum physics, or like fractals, there's always a fractal inside a fractal inside a fractal. So again, these things are being multiplied.
Ed, it's hard to believe, but our time is already up for this show. And I know you've promised that we can continue to work together so that we can share more of your knowledge and your gifts and your open-heartedness. So I will make sure that everyone has your contact info. We'll invite people back for another show, and you have an open invitation here. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Sacred Journey. We'll catch you next time. Thanks so much, Ed. We'll be back.
Nick Augustino right here at the East Side Restaurant. We always have the complete full dinner menu. Knockwurst, bratwurst, sauerbraten, potato pancakes, red cabbage, rice pudding, cream pies, all the desserts that Germany had to offer. I always do something different. Yes, I do. I brought seafood to the beer garden at the East Side Restaurant. East Side Restaurant, your German destination restaurant in Connecticut. Tiki-taka, hoy, hoy, hoy!